Welcome to Design with Ren, a podcast about the people, ideas, and systems shaping the future through design. So today's conversation explores a question that might sound unusual at first. What if AI was mothered? As artificial intelligence becomes more embedded into our everyday lives, the way that we design and guide these systems becomes increasingly important. What if instead of thinking about AI purely as a tool or machine, we thought about it as something we are raising, something influenced by the values, care, and the culture that we embed into it? So as systems learn from us, our data, our language, our biases, our knowledge, then in some ways we are already shaping their worldview. The real question then becomes, what kind of caretakers are we? So to kick us off with a question, Kim, what are your thoughts on the definition, perhaps?
Mother. Okay, so it is so amazing to see you again. We've had too much of a distance getting back to this podcast. Yes, so definition, let me just read something. While I was getting prepared for this, I thought, let me just pull up a working definition of mother and what it means. And I think we can also address the question of what if AI can be mothered? Or also, what if AI was mothered? I think it's all in the same parcel of conversation. So I was just reading an AI version of mother, and it says a mother is a female parent, typically embodying a nurturing figure who provides care, guidance, and unconditional love, playing a crucial role in a child's development, right? And so taking this back to the context of AI, I will first say, what if AI had been mothered? That's a very big question. And I think that is a very long conversation that could take days to answer because it has lots of complexities to it, because we are now suggesting a binary, right? Mother versus fathered, right? And if we think about the current state of artificial intelligence, this was built in the bowels of Silicon Valley, where it was controlled by men. So you could say the AI that we use generally in society right now has been fathered, but not mothered, right? And so it takes with it a lot of the value systems of what it means to be male generally. So the question, what if AI had been mothered, warrants a discussion, Ren.
Yeah,
I don't know
so
that I have
interesting. You're right,
an answer.
right off the top, you're making me think of this very differently, actually.
Right.
I'm curious how, when you interpret that definition personally, does it resonate with you, or does it feel uncomfortable kind of reading that, what if AI was mothered, and then that definition of mothered?
It highly resonates with me, and I think it does with you too, with your tech background and also us working in that general space of human factors, where when we design technology or develop technology, there was a built-in responsibility for us to research the impact of that technology, right? And one of the things I wrote about this whole mothering of AI as a fallout from Gregory Hinton's CBC interview, and he's sort of dubbed the what is the godfather of AI, where he asserts that AI requires mothering, as if it was a kind of a correction from what it currently is right now. But what I'm advancing here is that when I think of the definition of motherhood, it necessitates us thinking about responsibility, caring, right? Which was all part and parcel of the kind of work we did when we did human factors and we did research to say, okay, for example, if we're designing this technology, can it harm people, right? And so this resonates with me on the level that what we're seeing coming out of the whole AI conversation, it's causing a lot of harm. And to me, that is not in line with what it means to be caring, to be nurturing, and all of the characteristic traits that we associate with motherhood, right? And so I think that's from the vantage point in which I look at artificial intelligence to say, this does not seem to me as a technology that does these things that a mother would do, right? Yeah.
So are we talking about, so can AI be mothered? Talking about like nurturing intelligence, guiding behavior, or instilling values, or perhaps all of those things?
Yeah, I think so. I think AI can be mothered, but I want to be careful in saying that AI can be mothered, because what it suggests now is that we are going in to fix a problem that was created, right? And so it puts the whole concept of mothering in a kind of a police frame. We're going to mother this situation. And what I am
Mm-hmm.
advocating for is at the onset of development, we need to begin with care, right? And so the care is
Mm-hmm.
foundational. And what's what I'm looking for? But it was foundational to the process of development and deployment, as opposed to
Mm-hmm.
saying, now it's deployed. Now let's go in and fix what the fathering did, right? So
Sure.
yeah, that is for me where I see the difference in terms of can AI be mothered. Of course, we can fix to some extent what has been created, but that is not what I'm
Mm-hmm.
advocating for. I'm advocating for at the onset of this, we need to proceed with nurturing and care and responsibility and all of these characteristic traits that are associated with the feminine.
Yes, yes, yeah. So it's something about the caregiving or nurturing that technology discourse tends to.
Yeah, precisely that, right? Precisely that.
Yeah.
And it's just starting with that. And it just made me think as you're talking as well, too. I had been thinking about, the whole concept of what if AI was parented, right? And so it is not to omit the masculine in the
Mm,
development and deployment of artificial intelligence, right? But it is really to understand that existence itself requires existence. If we see AI as a child that learned machine learning, that it
mhm.
requires learning from two parents, not just one. And
Yes.
right now, there's an imbalance, right, with the high masculinity of AI models that have been deployed in society.
Mhm. I'm curious when you think about responsibility of then mothering, nurturing, or kinda like raising AI. I wonder if I phrase
Hmm.
it that way for myself as a way to kind of give some context. So if the AI is nurtured, cared for, brought up by the mother and the father,
Yes,
certainly that lends itself really nicely to the idea of co-creation, working alongside, raising alongside the
yes,
child, handing things off to the other in a way that we're making choices of, who can best manage this, or based on time, who can take on the responsibility
yes.
and the role, and when do you share out that responsibility to your community.
Mhm.
um, I'm talking very top of mind, but
No,
this
I actually
idea of
love that. I love that.
co-creation, running from an inclusive design lens, not, it's gender free, no gender bias. You're the best at knowing the guardrails or suggesting guardrails for AI to learn, and it's kind of instill the values that a
Mhm.
system like that should and can have. It's what's if I look at it as a technology, but for anyone, I always anyone I'm for myself, for others, if I'm giving people feedback on how to be your best self, it's
Yes,
the what's that system that you have in place. So from a technology point of view, if we think of how do we get started designing or caring for bringing up an AI, when you think about that yourself, what's the getting started process or onboarding for a engineer versus designer or researcher?
yeah, I love how you reframe this to make it more accessible to our audiences as well too. So the whole concept of machine learning is part of the training process of artificial intelligence. And so I think what
Mm,
you've done cleverly is to frame AI as a child, right? We're
mm,
teaching this thing about who we are, right? And of course, as we teach it, we're also learning from it. And if we frame AI as a child, I want us to just sit back and think about, raising children. What does it look like in a house when you have a father versus when you don't have a father, or when you have a mother versus not have a mother? And for me, I think it's the same kind of analogy that I'm alluding to, at least we're collectively alluding to, as we think about how do we
mhm,
situate AI and the concept of machine learning as teaching a child. And so you also triggered that's why I love talking to you. Another thought in me, when we're thinking about male and female, we're thinking about binary systems. And for me, that
mhm,
child that is being nurtured by the both is creating that entity that is a little bit of both. And so, in that sense, what you're creating is making space for gray spaces, right? Not male or female, but a co creation of something that reflects the qualities and the value systems of both. So, in that sense, when we talk about the mothering of AI from both perspectives of training that child, but also infusing value systems in that child, and I'm just thinking off the top of my head, I think that is what I'm trying to get at, is that we have been omitted as the feminine entity and the value systems in that co-creation process from the get-go, right?
Mm.
And so the goal for us when we think about it's another way, like you're saying, co-creation, I guess if we're talking in a design frame, that's basically what we're talking about. AI should have been a co-creation process, and it has
Hmm.
not been that to this point. And I know there are lots of companies sort of correcting that in their own specific context and corner of the digital universe. But more broadly, this has not been the practice of general AI practitioners to create this co-creation and co-created entity that takes a little bit from
Hmm.
the feminine, the masculine to create that thing that really speaks to the needs of a broader society.
Yeah, I love how you're framing that. In part, I wonder, so if we're framing AI as something that you're raising
Mhm.
and rather than just, let's say, deploying and
Yes,
thinking of it
yes,
as a onboarding process because it's, training those or helping those or introducing it to those that are developing it, creating it,
hmm,
time or going forward. We never know where people come into a design creation process.
yes,
So the onboarding process, if I think of it less like installing software, if I put it that way, because most people that listen in on our podcasts, of course, would can probably resonate with that. It's like, first time I'm getting started, I'm onboarding to a new system, I'm installing an
yes.
app or otherwise. That what if we thought about AI as like a new participant into a social ecosystem?
Wow.
You tell me if that's the right language or not. But instead
No.
of a pure technology setup, we would say, okay, well, alongside you using or creating the AI or starting
Mhm.
to interact and use it as a tool that you intentionally embed like values, care, responsibility. And this could be kind of introducing yourself, or I guess
Mhm.
the AI is what is responding in this case,
Yes,
that it
yes,
um, also then giving you, I don't know, you tell me how this would work. So I'm thinking very top of mind that if it's giving then sharing back, prompts perhaps that are or binary approaches to leadership, care, or the knowledge that it has. So that's yeah, it's like the
yeah.
how do you choose as you're creating it?
I think what you're talking to is this notion in AI practice, machine learning practice of oversight, right? How are you
Mm,
oversighting that interaction, mediating that? So one I'm just trying to think of one concrete example. So say for example you have an AI that is situated in the context of giving of being therapeutic or being a therapy AI, right? And the
mm-hmm.
AI has been trained, it has not been trained, it's been deployed.
Yes,
Set loose
yeah.
on society, right? But it has not been mothered from the onset. And it's just spewing out things that are like, whoa, this is insane. I would not, from a perspective of being in a relationship with a real person, give that advice, right? And so what I see when it is deployed is that there is a high need, a critical need to have that degree of oversight, which you can see that as a substitute for mothering to some extent. So that when the
Mm-hmm.
AI is saying, well, these are the actions that you will take. And there was a real example of a teenage boy in California, offing himself because the AI spewed information that a mother would naturally give to their child, for example, if you're thinking about it in a therapeutic, motherly context, caring context. And so in terms of the deployment phase and how we providing oversight for that, there is critical need to oversee what the AI has learned to this point, right? And for me, this is why I infuse the whole concept of things like responsible AI, ethical AI, to say, okay, we need to course correct this large language model because it is
Mm-hmm.
taking cues from um, data sets and data that has not been given that ethical oversight, care, and responsibility to be in interaction with the human in said context, right? So that's how I think about it in terms of, well, when it's deployed, we install it and we're using it. Like, what are we doing to actually course correct how it has been developed?
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense. If that
Yeah,
makes
no, it
sense.
does. That's a great way to kind of think about the how ideally, from our point of view, it would be created before it's deployed.
Hmm.
And so before before AI begins interacting with people, that ethical and kind of like relational foundation of it needs to be defined.
It needs to be tamed.
Yeah,
It
it
needs
needs
to
to
be
be
tamed.
tamed.
That
You think about
wildness
like
needs to be tamed.
yeah, so like female. So I'm thinking if it's like well, just at a very high level. I mean, this is maybe too simplistic, but female coded values, ones I can think of like empathy, care, listening, nurturing,
Yeah.
versus like masculine coded values. If I be stereotypical with this comment, likely that kind of like responsibility, this idea of protection and accountability be
Hmm.
more masculine, and a non-binary or sort of that integrative values. Again, tell me if the
Hmm.
language is right here. That would be about balance, fluidity, and what you pointed out, more of that contextual
Yes.
awareness.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Like, what do you need from me, right? In that specific
Yeah,
context.
what do you need from me? Because I'm somewhere in between, and that is a example. So some example prompts, perhaps like what values should guide, like if I'm creating an AI, what values should guide the behavior? And then who chooses those is, of course,
Hmm.
the question. Or is that if it's co-creative and collaborative from other, those that can have the basis to make decisions. Of course, who's choosing those people is always going to be
Yes.
choice as well. But what values need to guide it, and then what harm must it actively prevent?
Yeah,
And
absolutely. It's whose
how,
values, right? So whose values
yeah.
are actually imbued and layered in to
Hmm.
infrastructure is another very big question that's part and parcel of this whole conversation. Like, who designed this and for whom and who was left out, right? So
Yes.
it's about, whose values were baked into that. And we know just from surveys alone and just commonly held knowledge that women are not at the top, at the apex of those creating these technologies. Right.
Hmm.
And I say this to say as well, too, we're talking about this from a critical perspective, but I'm so hopeful that the next cycle of fixing the problem will really demand oversight and inclusion of women in that process who've been left out at the onset. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love how you're speaking about this and kind of reflecting. Is and the more awareness that we have about how it's how it's created in the first place versus I
Hmm.
find many people that I meet, well, designers, researchers, friends,
Hmm.
others that are using kind of AI as a tool, that they at least this is my perception, is that they're very more of responding to the technology versus feeling like they can be themselves a co-creator or
Yeah.
participant in how it works. And I think that itself is a lack of understanding. Well, I'll say that I'm part of them. It's a lack of understanding, while at the same time, really more from the responsibility point of view, those that have created it, a lack of educating and
Yeah.
helping them, using it to understand how they can be actively, or instead of saying how they could understand, really more of allowing them to be more actively co-creating,
Yeah.
participating, to make it better, as opposed to just this understanding of beware of what you enter, because the language models are learning from your
Mm.
inputs. So if we think about, then, can AI be mothered? What does that mean?
Mm.
And of course, it's something you're putting the responsibility back on those that are enabling the technology, and
Mm.
how it then should respect, I say, human dignity and diversity. It's
Yeah.
very to, how do you teach a child the things that they need to value before you send them out into the world to interact and respond to others?
Wow. You always make
Yeah.
me think, really. This morning I released my Substack, and it had to do with quite a few people telling me that they're being forced to use AI at work for efficiency purposes. And I think
Hmm.
what we're talking about is something very controversial. Something that I've been thinking a lot about is this idea of labor, right? We are now,
Hmm.
to some extent, at a point in AI technology world exerting labor to train something that was not adequately trained at the onset, right? And so that is one thing, and I've been thinking about that a lot in terms of sort of the long-term effect of people who are um, training or taming AI that was not appropriately trained. But anyway, I forgot what
Mm-hmm.
your question was, but this is, I have been thinking about this a lot in terms of that that training process, right? And how while we're
Mm-hmm.
training it is also training us. And there's been, I think, very limited work done in terms of providing enterprise-wide literacy for people working with artificial intelligence and empowering them to understand that this is just a tool, right? And you still have
Mm-hmm.
power in that interaction to sort of mold things the way you want. And the other thing, footnote to this as well too, I think some people when they use AI think AI is a panacea for everything. Oh, let me just Google it. Let me just, let me just chat GPT it or clone AI it. And
Mm-hmm.
there is danger in that mode when you give people, say, a handgun, and you're like, oh, here's a little, here's a handgun, without actually teaching them the guardrails of safe practice of using a gun. For me, it is the
Mm-hmm.
same paradigm that I see when we think about AI use as well, too. I don't even know if I'm answering any questions. I guess this is meant to be a discussion. But there
Yeah,
is a
yeah.
lot of conversations I think we're not having and understanding what it is we're giving people as a tool and what the
Mm-hmm.
power of that tool is, as well as the short and long term impact of that cognitive evolution of a person using said tool,
Mm-hmm.
thinking, here's a tool I'm using, but is that tool reshaping you? What's happening in that training of AI? So it's a big conversation, and I know we won't have a lot of time to talk about this, but the whole concept of mothering requires a whole day of brainstorming when we say, what
Mm-hmm.
if AI was mothered, or can AI be mothered? Should AI be mothered? For me, that is
Mm-hmm.
like a conference on its own. Maybe for women, internet, right? Isn't it Women's International Day like yesterday?
It
Or
is Women's
yes,
International Day coming up. And what a way to prompt this as others to participate in the conversation. I love it.
right.
I was for whatever reason this reminded me, and this is from a few years back. So it's you always prompt things that I feel like are in my archive. Where a friend of mine, very privileged, and I always thought, really, is this something that you should do as a mother? And that sounds very opinionated on my part too, was that she would and great for her. I mean, this is not, it's not meant as a judgment, but just this is what reminded me. And I thought when she said this to me, it's like, I'm sending my children to this camp in the summer, and it's a very expensive one. And I'm not going to give away the number because for those that are like, oh, I know what that is. But it was for the whole summer, and the children and the kids were young. And I thought, and she said, I'm sending them to this camp because these people have the same values that I do. And I thought to myself, if you have that much money to send your kids to that camp, why not just have them take the summer off and have your children experience the same values that you do versus what these other people have? Like, how do you know?
Outsourcing.
How do you know for sure? And her children are lovely. She's lovely. I love her. She's one of my,
Yes.
good friends. While at the same time, I'm just thinking of the AI as it's created by someone else. And I assume, though, do I? I guess I don't, because this is why we're having this conversation. Who made this? And does it resonate? And what's the harm? But it's like, just as children, if I frame it this way, just as children learned through, let's say, supervised experiences, like those when send a child goes to daycare or it's a babysitter or whatever the case might be, that as a parent, female, male, gender, diverse, whatever the case might be, you can't be the person with your child all the time. So you share that, which is wonderful that you can, and ideally find someone with the same values. But I'm going off in a little bit of a tangent, but early AI interactions could be guided, and that we, are and like how we observe or shape behaviors through giving feedback. We provide
Mhm.
correction. This is the way we can model behavior or correct behavior. And
Yes.
that's only through reflection on our own lived experiences that we will, of course, share what's the right way of doing things.
Yes.
I'm thinking of, so that's like the female would be the nurturing, you allow mistakes and you learn from those,
Mhm.
versus male might be, you will, if you're accountability, again, it's that stereotypical attribute. It's not just men,
Mhm.
but the design principle, like accountability. So you intervene when you see it's like, oh, this is going to be harmful for you. I need to
Yes.
help you correct? And then from that, other point of view, that it's about inclusivity. You're ensuring
Mhm.
that there's multiple perspectives. It's not just about you and the world that
Mhm.
revolves around you. You
Mhm.
sure that there's multiple perspectives that will help you shape your learning. So this reflects, I think, what you were expanding on was this idea of like a collective parenting
Yes,
for AI, rather than this like a unilateral type of control.
yes, yes, yes. Yeah, I guess the question is just because you can, should you? This reminds me of the origin of this thought about AI being mothered. So Gregory Hinton, the context in
Mm-hmm.
which he was talking about AI as mother had to do with the supposition that what if AI could actually, on its own, send bombs to another country, right? And we know that this
Mm-hmm.
is a possibility with autonomous war machinery and all of that, that you could actually allow AI to make this decision. And that was the scary thing when we think about if there is no oversight and guardrails for that, that is dangerous. And I have boys, as do you. You have a boy. And I know
Mm-hmm.
the way they see the world is one of winning or losing, right? So imagine AI that could actually fire off autonomous, machinery of war. And this is done from a male perspective. You think about it as war games. And I think about what if a woman or what if the feminine was overlaid as the value system, the guardrails to say, well, you know what? Yes, you may hit the mark and kill 100 people. But to me, when I think about, the motherhood aspect here as well, too, it also has to do with, these are other people's children. Do you have to hit them? And, I think of all the things that I would do as a mother to counter and to mitigate this masculine urge to win or this masculine urge to hit the target. And so these are some of the things that I think. Now, to your point about, and so in that case, the AI is learning from multiple perspectives, right? And I'm also thinking about your example of the child who gets to, of course, see the values of mommy at home and the day camp as well too. That is also, a kind of a similar structure. And
Mm-hmm.
so knowledge is also created in that middle. The meaning making is between that experience the child is having with mother versus with the daycare.
Mm-hmm.
When your friend says something like that, what we're missing is that middle dynamics that emerges from these two positions of child with mother versus child in that context of being at a summer camp. That's totally different things. And so in that
Mm-hmm.
way, that is a way to allow for the learning from other as well too. So yeah, if I had that much money, maybe I would send my kids to day camp too, just to have a summer off from mothering. But yes,
Mm-hmm.
so that is what I wanted to also add as the backdrop of the conversation as well too, is that there was a context that invoked the question as to whether or not AI should be mothered, should it be mothered, can it be mothered, right? So I was just thinking about that. I love talking with you because then you ignite something else, and then I'm like, did I even answer the question? But either way, I think the whole idea of AI having wide socialization with varying contexts is also critical as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, such a nice roundup of the questions and thoughts we've had today. It also, as you're talking, I think it's the how AI is mothered, but how our male children are mothered as well from a
Yes,
human point.
yes,
And with those multiple point of views, how then that changes how they present themselves and interact with the world and how they take on their responsibility. And as you're saying, it's like it's designed more from a male point of view. I'm thinking, well, what by what male? And what is the experiences that have been passed on to them from the mother and the father and of course previous generations all play such a role.
yes.
So
Breaking binary structures as well too. I think,
yes.
yeah, it's breaking the binary when we have the overlay of both opposites, male, female, and so you have that thing in the middle that is a
Hmm.
fusion of these two diametric opposites in many respects. Hmm.
Hmm. Yeah, and I'm reminding myself, thinking of, little Kim and, where was she in relation to little Wren in the world, and how we then come together from such a different backgrounds
Okay, you
and,
you're opening up a can of worms. So can I
I
tell you,
know, I know. It's been
I grew
such
up
a
on a multi-generational compound. So I had where I grew up with, of course, you know my history a little bit more, but I grew up in the Caribbean where
Mm-hmm.
in my mother's village, where the entire village was related to me. So there was grandmother, auntie, cousins, and everyone within, distance. I mean, we've lived that way since. And so
Mm-hmm.
what you're also bringing up is very important. It's not that I had mom and dad, but I had
Mm-hmm.
generational knowledge. I had ancestral wisdom and all of that. And so I don't know what the structures here for Canada, but I assume it was more of a nuclear family, mom, dad, siblings,
Mm-hmm.
etc. Right? And so for me, when I think about AI and responsible AI and culturally aware AI, which is another topic on its own, I'm also thinking about that dynamics as well too. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yep.
let's not open that kind of worms right now.
Yeah, it's so much more. All right, I've got the whole year planned out now.
Culturally
Um,
attuned AI.
Thanks so much for your time today. It's been such a thought-provoking conversation,
Oh,
and it's an idea we've been exploring. It's not been just about building AI, but in some ways, in all ways,
yeah.
about raising shifts how we think about responsibility, design, and the future of technology. If we are shaping these systems through data, value, and intentions, which we are,
Mhm,
the things we embed into them, then the question isn't just about what AI will become. It's
mhm.
who we choose to be in the process of creating it, designing it, nurturing it. Thanks so much again for joining me today on Design with Ren. And to everyone listening, if this conversation, I'm sure it has, sparked new ideas for you, please share this episode and continue the conversation about how we design a more thoughtful and human future. And we will see you all again, once again with Kim. Thanks so much for joining. Thanks for watching Design with Ren, where we explore what it means to create with care, context, and intention. If this sparks something for you, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who's designing for change. Want more? New episodes drop regularly, and you'll find resources, tools, and behind the scenes thinking right here on the channel. Keep designing with purpose, and I'll see you in the next one.